Stop everything you are doing right now, because what happened in last night's game against the Minnesota Twins was not just a baseball game. It was a moment that will be talked about for years. Two Twins star players committed consecutive intentional fouls in the ninth inning, not by accident, not out of desperation, but as a calculated move specifically designed to remove Shohei Ohtani from the batter's box. And it worked. Ohtani was replaced by a pinch hitter. But that's just the beginning. Because while that was happening on the field, something even more explosive was unfolding in the dugout. Home plate umpire Mike Winters walked over to Twins pitcher Louis Boss and physically confiscated his uniform, right there, on the field, in front of 45,000 fans, and what was discovered underneath that uniform shocked everyone in the stadium. And then, after the game, Dodgers manager Dave Roberts stepped in front of the microphone and said words that no Dodgers fan was prepared to hear. "Shohei's starting pitcher tomorrow will be..." And he paused. The entire press room went silent. Tonight, we are breaking down everything, every detail, every angle, every hidden truth from last night's game. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. Let's start with what happened in the ninth inning, because I think most fans watching the broadcast didn't fully understand what the Twins were actually doing. The Dodgers were leading by 1 run. Ohtani was at the plate with 2 outs and a runner on second base. Everyone in that stadium knew, and more importantly, the Twins knew, that if Ohtani got hold of one pitch, the game was over. One swing. That's all it would take. So what did Minnesota do? Their 2 star players, Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, who were positioned in the outfield and infield respectively, began a deliberate sequence of interference plays. First, Buxton, in a moment that looked accidental to the casual viewer, made contact during a live ball situation, drawing the foul call. Then, just 2 pitches later, Correa did the same thing, again drawing a foul that disrupted the at-bat rhythm entirely. What did you think of that sequence? Was it deliberate? There is absolutely no question in my mind that it was deliberate. When you watch the replay closely, and I've watched it 4 times, the body language gives it away immediately. Buxton's movement was too perfectly timed. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look apologetic toward his own team. He looked directly at the dugout afterward. That tells you everything. And from a strategic standpoint, it makes complete sense. The Twins know Ohtani's mental rhythm at the plate. He builds momentum pitch by pitch. He reads the pitcher. He calibrates. When you interrupt that process twice with consecutive fouls, you're not just stopping the at-bat, you're forcing a reset. And for a hitter who relies so heavily on preparation and timing, that reset can be devastating. The result? Ohtani was replaced by pinch hitter Chris Taylor. And while Taylor is a respectable player, he is not Shohei Ohtani. The Twins' strategy paid off, at least in that moment. But here's what I want everyone to understand. The fact that a team has to engineer a situation specifically to remove Ohtani from a plate appearance, that tells you more about Ohtani's dominance than any statistic ever could. They didn't try to pitch him out. They didn't try to walk him. They constructed a situation designed to make him physically unavailable. That is the level of fear this man generates. Now let's talk about the moment that genuinely shocked me, and I say that as someone who has watched baseball for a very long time. In the 8th inning, Twins pitcher Louis Boss was on the mound. He had been throwing unusually well for someone with his recent numbers. His fastball had unusual late movement. His grip looked different. And then umpire Mike Winters walked toward the mound, not a routine visit, and after a brief inspection, he physically took Boss's jersey off the field. What was found on that uniform? Based on the post-game umpire report and multiple sources close to the situation, the uniform contained a foreign substance, specifically a combination of grip-enhancing material that goes well beyond the permitted rosin bag. But what makes this particularly significant isn't just that it was there. It's the location and the quantity. This wasn't a small smear on a finger. The substance had been applied in a highly deliberate pattern, suggesting this wasn't a first-time decision. This was a prepared, practiced method. From a pitching perspective, what does that kind of substance actually do to a baseball? It changes everything. When you add that level of grip enhancement, you can manipulate the ball in ways that are physically impossible with a clean hand. The spin rate increases dramatically. We're talking potentially 200 to 300 additional RPM on a fastball. That doesn't sound like much, but at 95 miles per hour, 300 extra RPM makes the ball behave like it's braking in two directions at once. Hitters describe facing a ball with abnormal spin as trying to hit something that isn't following the laws of physics. And that's exactly what several Dodgers hitters reported after the game. Justin Turner said the ball didn't feel right from the first inning. Freddie Freeman mentioned that Boss's fastball was moving differently than anything I'd seen on the scouting report. These aren't excuses. These are legitimate observations from professional hitters who face hundreds of pitchers every year. The umpire made the right call. The confiscation was correct. And now Boss faces a suspension that could significantly impact Minnesota's playoff push. This situation is far from over. After the game, the press conference began like any other. Roberts walked in, sat down, took a breath, and then he said something that immediately changed the energy in the room. He was asked about Ohtani's status after being replaced in the ninth. And Roberts said, and I'm paraphrasing closely here, "Shohei's situation tonight was something we were monitoring from the seventh inning. We made the decision to protect him. As for tomorrow's starting pitcher, Shohei will not be on the mound." The room went quiet. Roberts continued, "We are being careful with Shohei's workload. The plan has changed for tomorrow. We'll announce the starter in the morning, but I want fans to know this is a precautionary decision. Shohei is not injured. But we are not going to take any risks." What do you make of that statement? Because to me, that is not a clean answer. You're right, it is not a clean answer. And the fact that Roberts specifically said, "Shohei is not injured," while also announcing he won't be pitching tomorrow is a contradiction that every baseball analyst needs to sit with for a moment. When a manager goes out of his way to say a player isn't injured, that is often, not always, but often, the first signal that something is being managed very carefully behind the scenes. Now, Roberts is one of the most experienced managers in the game. He doesn't make statements carelessly. So when he says, precautionary, he means exactly that. But precautionary about what? The workload argument doesn't fully hold here. Ohtani is currently on a 5-day rotation. He hasn't pitched back-to-back heavy innings recently. The workload numbers don't point to an obvious reason for skipping a start. Which leads me to believe one of two things. Either there is a very minor physical issue that the Dodgers are treating proactively, something like elbow inflammation or shoulder tightness that hasn't been disclosed, or, and this is the more strategic reading, the Dodgers are deliberately managing Ohtani's appearances to keep him at peak condition for what they see as a critical stretch of games coming in the next 3 weeks. Either way, the Dodgers' decision to keep this vague is itself a message to the rest of the league. Do not count on your scouting report. Do not plan for Ohtani and then find out he isn't starting. We will keep you guessing. Let's zoom out for a moment. Because when you put these 3 events together, the deliberate foul strategy, the Boss uniform scandal, and Roberts' emergency announcement, what you see is a picture of just how central Shohei Ohtani has become to the entire landscape of this baseball season. Teams are changing their in-game strategy specifically because of him. Opposing pitchers are apparently willing to risk suspension to gain an edge against the Dodgers. And the Dodgers themselves are managing Ohtani's schedule with the kind of precision usually reserved for postseason preparation. This is not normal. This is what a generational player does to a sport. He doesn't just change his own team, he changes how everyone else plays the game. From a Cy Young perspective, does tonight's developments hurt or help Ohtani's case? That's the fascinating question. On the surface, being replaced in the 9th inning and missing a pitching start looks like a negative data point. But the baseball writers who vote for these awards are sophisticated evaluators. They understand context. And the context here, that opponents are literally engineering situations to remove him from at-bats, and that his own team is protecting him with surgical precision, actually reinforces the argument for his value. You don't design a two-fall strategy to neutralize an average player. You do it for someone who can single-handedly win a game with one swing. That kind of recognition, from opponents who desperately want to beat you, is perhaps the most honest evaluation of a player's worth that exists in baseball. Ohtani's ERA remains historically low. His hitting numbers since late May remain elite. And now, even on a night when the deck was stacked against him, he remains the most talked about player in the sport. Tomorrow's starter hasn't been announced. The boss suspension is pending. And the Twins have to decide whether their strategy in the ninth inning was worth the attention it has now drawn. But one thing is absolutely certain. Shohei Ohtani is not just playing baseball right now. He is redefining what it means to be a baseball player, and everyone in the sport knows it. What happened last night wasn't just one game. It was proof that when Ohtani is on the field, the entire sport adjusts. And that, more than any MVP vote or ERA number, is the real story of this season.